All right, today I'm going to give you some tips and tricks on how to do some decorative squares on your walls. So we've got a room here we're working on doing a makeover for a nursery, and the customer wanted checkers on this wall. I'm going to give you some simple tips and tricks, the tools you'll need to just put some checkers on there. So to do this, to start this process out, I'm just going to be using a simple tape measure to measure out, my wall and lay out my squares. This is a very helpful tool, having a long level. This is probably a 4-foot level right here. It's going to make things really easy for you. A pencil to mark out, the lines and the squares on the wall, then FrogTape to get perfectly square lines on your wall. So to begin this process out, what I've got to do is find the center of this wall to begin with. So I'm going to measure out, find the center, and then we're going to begin, because the center is where my squares are going to start. They're going to start on the center, work their way up, and work their way out from there. And then once we get the center figured out, then we're going to begin marking out. I'm going to have 12-inch squares. I'll begin marking 12-inch lines down the wall, and then 12-inch lines across the wall, and that will actually lay out our squares. So first thing we're going to do is find the center of this wall. So I'm going to go from one edge of the baseboard to the other edge. I'm going to see it comes out to 130 inches. Half of that is 65 inches. And I know 65 inches down here. Now a simple trick, I'm going to lay this level right on 65 inches. And in order to find the center of the wall, I'm going to take my level, move it back and forth at the 65-inch mark. Make sure it's on 65. Once the level is level, I can actually mark my mark at 65 inches. So again, I'm going to get it down here, make sure it starts at 65, move it over. Now I see, got it level, make a mark, and that's the center of my wall right there. So that's the center point. First square is going to be centered right over that. Now I'm going to begin marking 12-inch lines from the top of the ceiling down. So I've got 12, 12, 12, 12. Another thing is, so I got marks right here, 12 inches down. We do have beadboard wainscoting going up right here. That, I'm going to measure it, because I don't need to do squares all the way down. It's 36 inches plus the baseboard, which is 2.5 inches. So 36. The wainscoting is going to be coming from here, 36, another 2 inches. My squares will stop right there. So from here down, I don't need to put any squares. So my squares are going to go, from this range to the top. Now I'm going to mark lines across the wall every 12 inches. Okay, I've got everything lined out now. Now I'm going to begin masking with FrogTape. Now I've used a pencil to mark this thing out. What you don't want to do is use a crayon. Don't use a Sharpie. Don't use a whiteboard pen. Anything that actually could bleed through your paint. The paint will cover right over the pencil. Another tip I'm going to give you is when masking for a square, like this square is not going to be painted, this one will be painted. If you take your tape and get it just over the pencil will get painted on the square that's getting painted. Now the ones that aren't getting painted, we're going to just go back, because we just painted this wall, and we'll touch up anything that has got a pencil mark on it. So I'm going to be using FrogTape Yellow to mask off my lines. And why do I use FrogTape, and why do I use the color yellow? FrogTape does have a polymer on the outside of the tape that doesn't allow liquid, i.e. water-based paints to actually flow underneath the tape. The polymer swells when a liquid hits it and fills up any gaps and voids between your surface and the tape, and then nothing will bleed through, so you'll get nice, crisp, clean lines. I'm using FrogTape Yellow because It's a crepe tape, crepe paper, and it's thinner than all the other tapes that FrogTape has. And that thinness, the paper itself being super thin, you're not going to get large dams on the wall. When I say a dam, when I mask a line and I paint over the tape, and then I pull the tape where the ridge where the paint comes up against the tape, and you pull it, what didn't get painted, it leaves kind of like a film thickness of paint, a line there, and that's totally fine until you want to repaint your walls. If you go repaint your walls later on and you're using a really thick tape, or if you're caulking over your tape, when you repaint the wall, you're going to see the lines really, really bad on the wall. You're going to have to skim coat the wall and retexture it to get rid of those lines. Now, FrogTape Yellow leaves the smallest amount of a dam of any tape you'll use, and you'll have a lot of success. You'll be able to possibly repaint your walls and not see those lines, down the road. So I'm using FrogTape Delicate Surface Tape. I'm also using the yellow. I previously painted these walls. I don't want to pull off any paint or anything off the wall, so I do like using the Delicate Surface Tape. Now I'm going to begin the process of masking these lines. We'll just start off right here and masking a line. So I'm painting these squares here just to give you, a little tip, a little advice. Just, depending on the color your squares are, I'd highly recommend using a really high-end paint. Try to get a one-coat color that will cover in one coat, so you don't have to go back and redo your squares. So this product I'm using here, this is Bear Dynasty, covers extremely well. And it's covering in one coat. It's a light color too, so more likely to cover in one coat over a lighter color like this. Now, if you're doing really dark squares, some paints have one coat colors. Like Bear has a one coat palette that's guaranteed to cover in one coat. So if you're doing squares like this, I definitely would highly recommend using something like that, so you don't have to go back and repaint your squares again. It's nice, just one coat. When you're done with your first coat, just peel off all your masking. Alright, so I've got now all my tape pulled, and you can see there's very few pencil mark exposed. I got some pencil marks down here. I'm going to touch these up. There's a few little places where had my tape on the wrong side of the pencil mark. Once this dries, I can just run my tape line right there, and I'll touch that up if I'm very particular and picky about it. There's some of my marks right here that I made to lay out my wall, and I'm gonna just easily touch those up.